Hi, I'm Count Jondi, and I occasionally rant about nerdy things when I feel like it. The historic Brawl format on Magic Arena might be one of the best ways to play Magic digitally, with a bunch of cool and interesting legendary creatures to build your deck around, as well as a wide array of possible strategies to explore. For those of you who may not know, Historic Brawl is a specific game mode for the card game Magic the Gathering, on its digital client Arena. You pick a legendary creature or planeswalker to play as your commander, and then create a 100-card singleton deck built around your chosen card. Then, during the game, you can play your commander from the command zone, and you always have access to it. This is a very cool format. However, quite a few cards in the format push other cards and strategies just below the surface of playability, or simply make the games they are played in entirely toxic. Cards whose absence would make for a better game. Cards that I would rather see tossed in the trash bin rather than continue to tarnish one of my favorite ways to play Magic the Gathering. The first card I want to talk about is Wash Away. At first glance, it might not seem like that a simple counterspell could be that much of a nuisance. Most of the time in other formats, Wash Away must rely on your opponent casting spells from their graveyard or exile in order to avoid paying the 3-mana cleave cost. But in Historic Brawl, a commander is cast from the command zone, so Wash Away reads as a 1-mana to counter any commander. 4-way commander players might think that this isn't too broken, since the card is arguably not all that great in Commander, even though I still think it's good. This is largely because Commander is a multiplayer format where trading 1-for-1 even as efficiently as Wash Away allows isn't necessarily all that fantastic. But in two-player game, every advantage is zero-sum. And this seriously harms the playability of any commander that costs more than 3 mana, as the tempo swing of having your big, cool dragon or big-ass demon countered for 1 mana, while you paid 6 or possibly more mana for it, is such a huge tempo swing that there isn't really a large reason not to slap Wash Away in every blue deck, as it can entirely shut down some commanders, and it prevents more synergistic commander decks from seeing a lot of play, which is exactly the thing you would want to see in a format like this. So simply put, Wash Away is a card that keeps your commander in your command zone, and for 1 mana, that isn't really a healthy card to put in the format. The second card I want to talk about is Atraxa Grand Unifier. Now, at first glance, this card doesn't look ban-worthy. It's expensive, it's big, it's splashy, and when you read the card first, you might think, oh, you need to play a bunch of different card types, so there is like a build-around restriction that creates for like a cool, unique deck. This really isn't true. You can basically play the whole kitchen sinks with Atraxa Grand Unifier. She motivates a deck where you simply play a bunch of good interactive cards constantly. Then, when you cast Atraxa, you have a fresh new hand of powerful interactive cards to keep grinding your opponent out consistently. This type of card is a particular pet peeve of mine as a commander. As a card, Atraxa is so front-loaded with advantage, it freshes out your entire hand, so it really changes how the game functions. After Atraxa resolves, any deck that's trying to grind out and win fairly will probably lose to Atraxa's card advantage. This motivates a lot of the meta to shift towards aggression and combo in a way that I don't think is necessarily all that interesting or cool for the format. And I truly believe that banning out commanders like Atraxa Grand Unifier diversifies the format and makes it more engaging to play. The third card I want to talk about is Golos Tireless Pilgrim. Now, this is a card that may not seem that fantastic. You play it for 5 mana, you get any land out of your deck, and you put it into play for play tapped. And there aren't that many land-based combos left in the format after the banning of Field of the Dead. My problem with Golos is that since he ramps with every enters the battlefield to trigger, if your opponent kills Golos, you can just replay him again if you have a land to play that turn, because Golos has just ramped you up 1 mana, and then if you play a land and you play him out again, you get to ramp up again, and then you still have Golos in play. And if your opponent kills him again and you have another untapped land, you can just play Golos again, and you can just kind of keep doing it. But leaving Golos in the battlefield can equally be a death sentence, since if your opponent spins the top 3 cards of your decks and plays them for free, this can often end the game on its own. And this is in addition to the powerful utility of getting any land out of your deck. And with Magic releasing more and more lands with powerful utility effects, Golos is likely just going to cause issues to the format at some point, so I would rather just tear the band-aid sooner rather than later. The fourth card I want to talk about is Brawl, Chief of Compliance. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Control as much as the next guy. I love my Teferi, I love my Kaido. The problem I have with Brawl is that he doesn't need to do anything but Control. He can simply counter every spell you play. And since he makes his counterspell so cheap, and since he gets to draw and discard with every spell he counters, the deck can almost exclusively run on counterspells with very little need to play anything else in the deck, leading to a game where you either need to have some kind of hate piece for the deck like Alice or Shepherd, be on the play and make sure Brawl never hits the table, or die slowly as he counters every spell you can play. Control shells should let their opponent play at least some Magic, and should be forced to at least have to play a greater amount of threats than Brawl has to. He can simply run maybe 2 to 3 threats in the entire 100 deck, run like 40 counter spells, but win anyway because he counters every spell you cast. Playing against a Brawl deck like this is incredibly toxic, it's not very fun or engaging, and quite frankly, I think Brawl should comply with a ban of his very own. The sixth card I want to talk about is Kinnan, Onder Prodigy. Kinnan is a similar issue to Golos. All that Kinnan needs to win the game, like Golos, is mana, and when he has it, he just spams his ability and cheats in large dickwads. Being only 2 mana also enables grossly explosive plays. Let's say he starts with a turn 1 mana dork. Then, on turn 2, he can play himself, and then play Mind Stone into an Arcane Signet into another 2 mana ramp card. That's not to mention how quickly he can get all of this forward. This little man shits out all of his hand, and then his entire deck, faster than most decks, can resolve a much needed Wrath of God, which won't necessarily resolve as Kinnan has access to insane amounts of mana and plenty of counter and protection spells in blue and green. The best way to beat Kinnan is to make sure that either he doesn't resolve enough mana acceleration to go crazy, or make sure Kinnan never resolves, or always gets removed before he gets to untap. Seeing how much of a threat on top of how much mana he can make, it would be better for the format if Kinnan instead took an early retirement with his favorite big beasties instead of sicking them on innocent historic Brawl players. Oh, won't you look at the time! It's Rusko time! Another commander in the vein of Brawl that can afford to play the maximum amount of counter spells in their deck simply because their commander is a win condition, card advantage, and ramp, all in the same package. Did I mention he also gains life, spits in your dinner, and drinks your coffee on a daily basis? If Rusko resolves, he makes a Midnight Clock, a card that's already quite good in slow decks at 3 mana in the format. But no, he has more. He also makes every spell you cast drain for 1 life and speed up the counters on his Midnight Clock, so he can soon get a fresh hand of 7 cards to work with. Oh! He will also flicker himself to make more clocks, to make more mana, to make sure that Rusko is the only one that gets to play much in the way of Magic. His design shows the toxicity of self-ramping commanders. Commanders that tap for mana or add mana while they're on their board are usually fine, but commanders that put you ahead on mana that isn't tied to them existing on the board is incredibly toxic, unfun, and quite frankly, Rusko's Workshop needs to be put out of business as soon as possible. Need I even say it? Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer, is an utterly toxic card to play against. Similar cards that were much weaker in the past, such as Thief of Sanity, Daxos, and Miletos, were all costed at 3 mana, albeit with some evasion or other advantage built in. But Ragavan has the audacity to make a treasure whenever he hits the opponent too. A Ragavan player on the play immediately plays Ragavan. By doing so, they put their opponent in a position of needing to immediately answer it. Playing a creature isn't going to be enough, as some form of damage-based removal is just going to cut through whatever small creature you play. After Ragavan gets his first swing in, things get so much worse, as Ragavan then has a treasure to either replay himself or use it to play accelerated threats. Ragavan is both a mana dork, a threat, and card advantage, all in a neat 1 mana card that demands an immediate answer. Ragavan getting hits in, also paying for his own commander tax, which he can then cheat by dashing himself out and then just proceeding to play him every turn for 2 mana, all while laughing at any sorcery speed removal an opponent might have. The ability to play 4 Ragavan that one needs to draw out of a 60-card deck has warped the modern format. Historic Brawl is a format where you are guaranteed Ragavan on turn 1 every game. The monkey also has a detrimental effect on the meta, since everyone needs to pack turn 1 removal to have a chance against the Beastly Thing, that's being played a lot by the way. Every cheap synergistic commander is being pushed out of the format, since they'll instantly die as everyone is prepared to face the Ragavan meta. The lesson we can take from this is that excessive card advantage, mana that isn't tied to the commander themselves, and being ludicrously cheap while doing so are all the hallmarks of what I don't want to see in the historical Brawl format. And if you do want to see that, get out. I never want to talk to you. We are not friends. We're not going to be friends. And that'll be it. This has been Count Jondi vehemently complaining about the problems in the historic Brawl format. Now, if you like this kind of content, don't expect any more of it to come anytime soon. This is mostly just me doing little complain bits for funsies, and they might not come. But, you know, you can give a like or subscribe.